Yes. Thank you. Yes, good afternoon, Board. Elizabeth Nielsen, Deputy County Administrator. At the Board's direction, I am bringing this item back for Board action regarding the attached draft proclamation of a local emergency and requesting the Governor proclaim a state of emergency related to impacts to Klamath River water quality and potential impacts to air quality related to the Lower Klamath Dam removal activities. Attached as part of this agenda item is the updated draft proclamation, the county's recent water quality memo, results from the county's Environmental Health Department's February Klamath River water quality samples, the Environmental Protection Agency's primary and secondary drinking water standards, which the Environmental Health Department's water sample results were compared to in the memo, and the email that I referenced last week during my presentation from Mark Bransom, committing to the county to do certain water sampling activities. There is extensive detail included in the water quality memo, but in general, the results of the county's water quality sampling showed levels of heavy metals that were above Klamath River baseline. On a monthly basis and including the state constituents that the county is sampling for. And I did not receive those commitments. However, Matt St. John with the Water Board is on and would like to make a comment as to their efforts coordinating with KRRC regarding the sampling that Mr. Branson referred to earlier. As a reminder, the water quality sampling that must be performed by KRRC currently or their contractors per their water quality permit requirements includes 2 heavy metals, while the county's water quality sampling and what I requested from the state board at the direction from this board includes 11 heavy metals, 3 of which tested higher than the EPA's primary and secondary drinking water standards, and are not currently being tested by KRC's contractors as part of their current continuous monitoring. However, we did receive additional information today, or the board received additional information today regarding what KRRC will include in a statement of procedures, which we look forward to receiving from KRRC. To speak to local air quality monitoring efforts, the County Ag Commissioner capacity as the director of the Siskiyou Air Pollution Control District is available if there are any questions from the board. And with that, I want to keep it simple and straightforward, and I'm here to answer any questions that the board may have for me.
Oh, is there any other staff that wish to make a comment before? I have a few public comments, but.
And I would ask that Matt St. John be able to
do
provide a comment. That would be great. Thank you.
Okay.
I agree 100%.
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, good morning.
Or actually not good morning,
Or
good
yeah,
afternoon.
Good afternoon, sorry, yeah.
Quite the endurance. I commend you. Good afternoon, Chair Comstaff, members of the board. My name is Matt St. John. I'm an environmental program manager with the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board. And I was asked by my colleagues at the State Water Resources Control Board to address you today, given my background working in the Klamath River on water quality issues over a couple of decades. Prior to transitioning into my current position with the Regional Water Board last year, I served previously for 10 years as the executive officer of the North Coast Regional Board. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to join you today in person, but I have been listening throughout the comments and discussion among the board all morning and into the afternoon, and I'm glad to provide some comments to you now, addressing some of the things that have been, many of the things that have been discussed today regarding Klamath River water quality, and then to answer any questions that you may have for me. The comments that I want to make regarding water quality conditions in the Klamath River are consistent with the points that have been presented in a frequently asked questions document that is now posted on the state and regional water boards websites, and which were updated just today to be clear that recreational use of the Klamath River would not lead to adverse health effects. And I'll speak a bit more to that in a minute. First, I want to say that the water boards continue to maintain that will take time. The State Water Board's environmental analysis, the final environmental impact report for the Klamath Dam removal project, anticipated that there would be short-term impacts associated with the release of sediment stored behind the dams, but that removal of the 4 dams will result in long-term benefits to both water quality and to fisheries. It was known that sediment has accumulated behind the dams for over more than 50 years since the dams were constructed, and that in addition to containing decades of decaying algae, these reservoir sediments also do contain some organic and inorganic chemicals. And it was expected that river water concentrations of some of these chemicals, including metals, which are bound up in the sediments, would increase temporarily in the Klamath River downstream of the dams as the reservoir drawdown occurs. The State Water Board's environmental analysis for the project determined that the water downstream of the dams could be unsafe for drinking in the short term. And the State Water Board therefore required that KRRC mitigate for this anticipated outcome and to conduct water quality monitoring, to evaluate conditions, and to back up the mitigation work. So short-term impacts to water quality were expected. However, these short-term impacts are anticipated to diminish over time as sediments are either flushed down the Klamath River or stabilized in place, and a more naturally functioning river system takes hold, bringing about the long-term water quality improvements that are expected for the Klamath River. But I want to be clear, we understand that there are concerns regarding the heavy metals that were samples that were collected by the county. But it's important to keep in mind that the water quality conditions reported by the county's one round of monitoring provides a snapshot of water quality from late January, which was the period that was expected to have the highest levels of suspended sediment and associated inorganic chemicals, including metals. And that snapshot of water quality may not represent the current water quality condition now at the end of March. The metal results that were reported by the county are in line with the water quality expectations that were documented in the state board's final environmental impact report. The memo that was prepared for you by the county's consultant compared the measured concentrations of heavy metals to drinking water standards. And while drinking water standards do apply to the Klamath River, they're only applicable where Klamath River water is used directly as a public drinking water system. And during the drawdown, the period of drawdown, as Mr. Branson has shared with you, there's only one public drinking water system downstream of the dams, and in conformance with the requirements of the final EIR, KRRC has provided an alternative drinking water supply to that system at the Caltrans Collier Rest Area. And statewide, as has been stated earlier, no one should be drinking surface water without treatment. Any surface water that's used for drinking should be tested and treated in accordance with state and federal requirements for drinking water systems. Now, with respect to private drinking water wells, the water boards believe that the metals from the mobilized sediments will not affect the quality of groundwater wells located near the river. The metals that were stored behind the dams and that are now being flushed down the Klamath River are sorbed onto sediment particles, and water that's pumped from a well is filtered through the soil column and is not expected to draw water from the Klamath River. Finally, in response to concerns about potential health effects to people recreating on the river, either swimming or fishing, the Water Board, in coordination with colleagues within Cal EPA, completed an assessment of the county's available water quality data and current conditions. And we've determined that it's unlikely that recreational use of the river would lead to adverse health effects or exposure due to exposure from in the river. Specifically, health effects from contact with the skin from swimming with the Klamath River would be negligible. And incidental ingestion, meaning swallowing of water when swimming during late winter, early spring, summer months would not cause adverse health effects. Now, as we heard from Mr. Branson earlier today, KRRC has agreed to complete an additional round of sampling consistent with the monitoring that the county completed, including analysis for heavy metals. And in addition, they will conduct their regularly scheduled sampling following this additional round of monitoring. And results from these additional sampling events will inform whether future sampling would be helpful or needed in order to further assess potential health effects, either to humans or to aquatic life. So wrapping up, in conclusion, the Water Board does not believe that the Klamath River water quality conditions pose any public health risk associated with the potential well contamination, recreational water contact, or to drinking water systems. We appreciate the county's proactive steps to monitor water quality conditions, and we look forward to reviewing the results of the additional sampling that KRC has agreed to conduct. And based on those results, the water boards will continue to coordinate with your staff and the staff's consultants to determine whether additional monitoring is needed or other mitigation measures are warranted. So thanks a lot for hearing my comments, and I, of course, will be glad to answer any questions that you have for me.
So stay right there, Matt, and we'll come to the board real quick and see if there's any questions. Supervisor Howe, anything? Supervisor Valenzuela? Supervisor Chris?
No follow-up. Thank you for being here.
Supervisor Oakland? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Matt. Ms. Nielsen, continue. Who's next?
I didn't,
Nope.
if you have any questions for myself or any other staff, we are available.
Anything? Okay, does Mr. Shannoni have any comments that he'd like to make?
Good afternoon, Board of Supervisors, Director of Emergency Services, Brian Shannoni. Just in accordance with what you had requested in the state of emergency, we had added just whatever Elizabeth had spoken on. But that was the only other, there was a question in air quality that we had discussed. And then, any questions?
Supervisor Coburn.
I'll go back to the discussion we had last week regarding funding. Are there any more information on that, or any thresholds that we have to meet? Has that changed any at all about funding that we might be able to get from the federal government or the state government regarding a declaration of emergency?
Yeah, I think a great question. Perfectly stated, that was brought up earlier today, and one thing I did want to discuss is if a state of emergency is declared, there is no individual assistance. So the state of California does not issue individual assistance to those affected, whether it be wildfire or whatever it might be. Only the federal government can issue individual assistance, and that would be a federal declaration. The only other funding that would be available, if we were to push and see what that looks like, it's a very slim chance. I've only gotten it once through the McKinney Fire, and that would be an SBA. It's a loan with a very low rate, SBA loan.
Is that for individual property owners, or is that for us as a county?
So there's a breakdown of two. There's individual assistance, which would be so-and-so has been affected by a disaster, and the state or the federal government would pay that person a set amount of money for individual assistance. We will always get public assistance, and that's going to be for infrastructure, roads, any damaged public infrastructure.
Okay, so with that, if there were, I'm not sure if I should even go this route. If there were any outstanding money that we needed to pay for roads, say Copco Road infrastructure, is there a way that we can look at that?
So yes, it's broken down in certain ways. It's there's a Cat A, Cat B, Cat C, which is usually our bridge work or whatever it might be, bridge or road repair, and those would be something that would be a claimable cost if the state issued California Disaster Assistance Act, which is CDAA, and that is the reimbursement of any funding that we, anything that we may see. So this road here is destroyed from fire, disaster, whatever. State issues CDAA, California Disaster Assistance Act. We pay for it, and then it's a reimbursed back from the state of California, with a cost share back to this county.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Shannoni, it might be for you, but Ms. Emery, if you could get Mr. St. John, if he's still on. I hate it when I do this, you come up with a question afterwards, but something's popped up, question for you. For groundwater testing, President Reagan had a quote, "Trust but verify." And so in regards to the, can you hear me in the back row? In regards to the state or the feds are saying this will not, percolate into groundwater, is there a system or funding that can come into place, or a pattern that certain wells are tested in order to confirm that nothing bad is happening? A further step beyond the initial studies that confirms that either confirms something is happening or confirms something is happening.
If I understand your question correctly, the state and regional boards don't have a particular funding source for helping to pay for monitoring of private groundwater wells. we had a meeting yesterday with county staff and Miss Murphy, and understand that there have been property owners that have done monitoring. We'd be happy to take a look at those monitoring results and provide our review and assessment of those conditions. But as far as funding to help pay for that, unfortunately, no, the state of California does not have funds that I'm aware of to assist private landowners in monitoring private groundwater wells.
Stay on. I remember, talking last week about this. Let's say it was city of YREKA or whatever. They were getting their source. They're not, but they were getting their water. There'd be one point where we could test. Would there ever be money for municipal city for water testing?
Yeah, I mean, so public water services are regulated by the State Water Resources Control Boards, their Division of Drinking Water, and those systems do, they're required under permit to do monitoring, and at sometimes there is assistance that can be provided for those monitoring costs of those public water services. But it's a kind of a different beast for private wells, unfortunately.
Oh, thank you. To follow up on that, I think that the state should view this as though it's one large municipality with several individual outlets or inlets of water coming in. Like I said, trust but verified. People have a legitimate concern of spending a lot of their disposable income, and I'll say even more than disposable income, just ensuring that they're safe. So I would urge the state to take that on in some pattern to test residential wells at a certain rate to trust but verify this.
Okay. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Smith.
Mr. Steve John.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mr. Smith, do you have anything you wish to add on the air quality?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chairman. Jim Smith, Air Pollution Control Officer, representing the Air Pollution Control District Board of Directors. I have a couple of pictures to share with you. The Air District was able to put up 4 purple air sensors at Calco yesterday. One of them has already failed, and we'll try to replace that on the 28th of March. That's not the right one. That's the second one. That's okay. The map. I have a picture of the location. Purple air sensors measure PM 2.5, which is particulate matter, 2.5 microns inside, pretty small. It's a type of particulate matter that gets deep in your lungs and causes serious health effects over time. We think that a more appropriate level of measurement would be 10 microns, which would collect any type of dust being blown around up there, including 2.5 microns. But in the meantime, we had those available. We put them in place. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the alternatives that will give you better data. So the next picture, you can put the other one down. Oh, wait, go back. For those of you viewing this, this is a site called purpleair.com, I believe. That's what it says. You can click on those little green buttons, and it will tell you what their quality is based on the 2.5 micron PM 2.5 ratings. As you can see, air quality is really good up there based upon these cheap meters. They're not real accurate, but it gives you kind of a guideline. One's at the community center, and there's the 3 residences that have volunteered to let us put those up. Thanks to Elizabeth for providing that information. I appreciated that. Next picture, please. If the board is interested in additional data collection and information, this is the type of monitor that would have to be placed. There's 2 different kinds. One's called an EBAM, and one's called an EBAM Plus. EVAM measures 2.5 or 10. Our current ones would be reporting 10 microns as a 2.5 micron reading to the air now smoke management, because this is what we usually use them for. The second kind, EVAM Plus, is a federal equivalency method that can actually be used in court. Depending on what the board desires as far as air monitoring is concerned, we can get pretty extensive. So what I would like is some guidance from you going forward that I can take to my board and implement your request. What kind of data you would like to collect, how much you would like to collect, and for how long. The Air District does not have funds to do this, so there would have to be some method to pay for this. And I'm more than willing to work on that. We currently have some EVAMs on hand. They're dedicated mostly for a McLeod prescribed fire, which is burning all the way around the town of McLeod, and I'm not gonna move them out of there, but I can get a couple more to place near the Klamath River if you need it. I'd also like to say that the Air District board would probably be willing to entertain a recommendation from me to provide a proclamation supporting an emergency air quality issue. The likelihood of the planning that occurred up there, this is from the Agricultural Commission, succeeding this year is 50-50. Some of the things they planted will grow. A lot of the stuff that was planted by helicopter is going to have some pretty high failure rates unless something happens to get the seed soil impacts done better. That would indicate that we'd be looking at more dust impacts because of the lack of vegetation. Now, that may not happen, but in my professional opinion, it's likely to. Do you have any questions?
Any questions? Supervisor Valenzuela?
Sure. You know, one of the things I've advocated forever and a day on this board is to put air monitoring, and thank you for finally getting Mount Shasta up and running, but how long did it take for that to happen? I've long advocated for north, south, east, west,
Long time.
and yeah, and so I realize there's a cost, but I think it's just prudent, you know, I wish we were a little bit more proactive in this sense, so thank you for getting something up there as quick as you did.
Get a lot of help.
You know, I realize there's a cost, but this is one of those things where cost is not the highest priority. Again, this is just me. I think saying we're going to declare an emergency when we don't have data is premature.
I agree.
And so, you know, to me, it's like, I want the best piece of equipment we can get, possibly. I think there's grant money out there. I will remind this board that I was on the SISKQ board, and I got a grant fund operation through, because small rural counties like us don't have money just to do something. So we could go after these kind of things, including well monitoring and all those kind of things. I'm glad that we got these monitoring things up. I would replicate what we have in YREKA and Mount Shasta, up at COPCO. And I would look to someone smarter than me for guidance of what we need to look for when it comes to health, safety, those kind of things. So we probably need to get public health to get their input of what the ramifications are.
So I can address that just a little bit if you don't mind.
Mhm.
One of these monitors, the two EVAMs, I should say, collect that, they collect the deposit that you can use to analyze the, you know, contents of the soil, whatever's collected in there. The purple air sensors don't do any of that. Collecting it is pretty easy, storing it's pretty easy, protocol's pretty simple, pretty well done. And that would give us some backup on analyzing it for toxics, you know, which is probably a good idea. I can take your request to the board of directors. It's gonna take a little work to get a grant.
Sure.
We do have a grant already in place that will allow us to put a permanent air monitoring station in Happycamp, just so you know.
Good.
So we're getting there.
So part of it to me is, you know, data collection, and then it's interpretation. You know, I need, again, someone smarter than me to interpret that data.
Sure.
And so, you know, glad that we're moving forward, because this isn't a short-term thing. This isn't a, yeah, I get they're temporary, but this is like permanent in my mind.
Supervisor Howe?
Thank you for being so quick.
Had a lot of help.
I know you did.
Told you that.
I'm thanking all of you, and being so responsive, because this is critical. And it's critical that we got this established right now, so we have a baseline, before we get the drying winds of the summer up there. So on the less than sophisticated monitors.
Purple air sensors.
Yeah, so would you say send the screen off for analysis, for chemical analysis? Is that what you would have to do?
I can't do anything except give you that information you saw on the screen from a purple air sensor. For the EVAMs, I can take the tape that the deposit is put on, and we can analyze the contents.
Okay. Thank you.
But I'd have to have those sensors in place. They take a little more attention to detail, secure location, Wi-Fi, or a satellite phone connection, or a cellular phone connection, which is unlikely up there in many cases, and enough of them to take care of business and to complete what I have to do in my mandated monitoring projects.
Okay.
Seems like we're on the same page.
Okay. Everybody? We're good? So I think you got consensus that
You put as many monitors out there
bring
as I could get the money for, right?
yeah, but the better quality air monitor, because yes, you are establishing a baseline so that we know where we're at now and where we'll be in the future.
The best baseline would be the federal equivalency method, EVAM plus. I don't have any of those.
Well,
They cost
the
about
best of what you
20
have,
grand.
unless we get some assistance, I guess.
So if I guess,
Supervisor
to me, I would replicate what we have in Mount Shasta, YREKA.
Okay.
And then with that, my expectation is, because this
I
is
can't
gonna
do that yet. That's gonna take a long time.
we'll evolve there.
Okay,
And I'm telling you what my expectation is.
okay.
So I would also expect that we're gonna have this before the Air Pollution Control Board for further discussion, and maybe more robust discussion.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Dean, anything to add to this dialogue?
Certainly.
Hello, Board, Rick Dean, Community Development Director. First of all, regarding the memo that was put out by the county, I'd like to bring attention to a typo that occurred on page 11 and 12. It was pointed out to me earlier this morning. Those samples were taken in January of 2024, which it says in the ledger up top. However, on the data piece of it to the left of the margin, it says January of 23. I took those samples personally, and they were taken post dam removal. So, that for clarification.
Okay.
Aside from that, I'd just like to speak briefly about the sampling that we took the county, and I'm glad to hear that we'll be working with KRC to try to fill some gaps, because the heavy metals that we sampled for were, more intel than the studies that RES did in 23 prior to dam removal. Namely, they did not sample for arsenic, lead, or iron, which we did, and all of those conditions were somewhat elevated. One thing that I would like to point out, and maybe refer to Mr. St. John's about too, also, the aluminum that was determined to be the most constituent of concern within, the more samples done up in the reservoir. And the levels there were like 0.087. Once mobilized for the sediment, at least the grab sample that we had was 59 milligrams per liter. And it's my understanding that probably at those levels, it's a skin irritant when it comes in contact. Mr. St. John might have a better indication of what that level is for skin irritation when it kicks in exactly. But that's about a 60-fold increase in mobilization of aluminum. The arsenic, the lead, and the iron that were not tested for by RES, they don't have a good comparison to see, how that was affected by immobilization of the distribution of the sediments. Just wanted to point that out. Look forward to working with KRC to do a more detailed review and over time monitor the river constituents with the heavy metals. Also, I'll note that the volatile organic compounds that we sampled for that were identical basically to what was analyzed from the sediments in the reservoir were basically not detected, or they were below drinking water standards.
Any questions for Mr. D? Thank you, sir. I'm going to go to public comment. I have 3 in-house. Angelina Cook, you're first. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Angelina Cook. I've lived in Siskiyou County for about 20 years, and I work with the California Sport Fishing Protection Alliance. We represent millions of California's families that have been raised fishing in California's rivers and coastal communities, but our work also benefits tribes and commercial fishermen who are experiencing devastating consequences from the increasing risk of salmon extinction. I want to thank you for holding these special meetings on a regular basis. I think it's given people a chance to air their concerns and also learn about this process. As everyone knows, this is a huge turning point for Siskiyou County, and the world is watching to see how we navigate these challenges of dam removal, to see if we can actually make a dent towards salmon recovery. The damage to personal property is obviously a big priority. It needs to be addressed, and it sounds like it is for the most part, but the environmental damage that we are experiencing has been accumulating for 85 years. When the valley floor was inundated and reservoirs formed and river temperatures rose and habitat for anadromous fish was blocked. The river and surrounding banks are going to need time to heal. There's just no way around that. So I encourage us to be patient and cooperative and respectful of the many interests that are invested in the success of this project. I think that because impacts that we are experiencing were anticipated and are being addressed, it seems to me that an emergency proclamation would not be appropriate, but I encourage you to continue engaging the experts and referring impacted individuals to assistance. So in general, I don't support a proclamation, but I do support your attention to detail around this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara Austin? Not here.
Can you press, I don't see the time up there, is that not working?
It's me,
That's
I
all.
haven't.
It's not connected.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
William Simpson?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, board members, again. So just to start out, my name is William Simpson. I'm a rancher up on Iron Gate. And to start out, I do support the board in proclaiming a state of emergency. And the reasons being, we need to err on the side of the citizens. There's a lot of things going wrong. There's a lot of unintended consequences here. There's a lot of hand waving about what's going on and excuses and so forth. We can't err in a way that may harm the potential of the health of the citizens of this county. I mean, the people up and down this river are exposed to what's in that river. The remaining sediments are, according to the engineers who have looked at it, I'm not making this up as I'm going along, I'm reading the 2 key reports. There's about 15 million cubic yards of sediment remaining in the lake bottom. You just heard our Ag Commissioner Jim Smith tell you, planting it is probably not gonna secure it. Even if it's planted, we've all seen the big floods. We've been here, I grew up here. 64 flood, it moves people's boulders, barns, trees down the river. That canyon will be scoured. That sediment, regardless of what they put there, even if it's 100% successful, will go down the river. And what will 15 million cubic yards do? We've just seen what 5 does. So we can't afford to let that happen. By declaring an emergency, whether or not we get funded, we're gonna bring it to the attention of the state of California and the governor. If we don't declare, we have 0 chance of getting any money. Even if we have a 5% chance of getting some money by declaring the emergency, that's infinitely better than 0. So we need to reach out to the state with this declaration, and we need to let the governor know we have a problem. You know, Houston, we have a problem. It's time to do it now. And the citizens are looking to this board to help us out and get this declaration up to Gavin Newsom's desk. The governor needs to know how we feel. And this is the only way to really do it. More talk back and forth, more meetings, more people with design studies, more manipulating of data. That's not gonna get us where we need to be. We need this declaration. We need it today. Thank you.
Greg Cheater?
I believe he's not.
Okay. Chrissy Reynolds?
Chrissy Reynolds, Cocoa. So this is from last night, about 10 o'clock after we put the monitors in. This is at the site closest to the dam. It's measuring 132 in the red. This is what the reservoir looks like even after the rains that we've just had. The dry, cracked. Some of these are like maybe 36 inches deep, about that wide. We're not really allowed to walk over there because in every letter that we get from our good neighbors from the KRRC, we're threatened with trespass and being reported to the sheriff's office. So by asking for a state of emergency, because for us it is, with all due respect to the people that are in charge of this permitting and this process, they don't live here, okay? Today's our wedding anniversary, and I haven't had time, honestly, I haven't had time to even think about that, or my daughter's 16th birthday, or Easter, or anything, because for the last, well, I don't know, since January 23rd, and for the record, it's 10 deer. Okay, the first 2 deer were killed on January 27th. I know because I was there. I heard the shots. I documented it. I took the pictures. It was 8 deer on the 29th. I know because I was there. I had to tell my neighbors what was going on. I have not had proper sleep, proper rest, and we don't qualify for anything. Phil and I don't qualify really for anything through the mitigation because we're not on a steep slope, we're not on a well, but there's nobody else in our community. I think sometimes people forget in a city, because there's already somebody call. You can call that person, you can call that agency, you can call that expert. But when you live where we lived, they call us, they call me, because there's no one else. If people that don't have technology would like to know information, we haven't been unreasonable in what we've been asking for. This is just basic information. Where are you doing these sediment samplings? Where are you doing the water sampling? Are you doing it above us? Are you doing it right here for us? What are the impacts to the dust? We cannot get answers. Everything that we have asked gets kicked down the road. And with assurances that we'll get right back to you, we'll get right on that. We're still waiting on signs, we're waiting on air quality, we're waiting on lab tests, we're waiting on money we don't have.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you, Supervisor Boyd. This is Holly Hansard, and I urge you to err, if you err, on the side of declaring this emergency. We have suffered an extreme loss, in a battle, a loss. It's a devastation. And it is shocking, and the full extent of the emergency hasn't really, come to the surface. But we need a victory. We need a little bit of love. We need a lot of love. And this isn't just like flowers or little seeds planted by helicopter or by hand or a little, memorial tree. This is a statement that we need, this tiny voice from you guys. Just this little victory today of you saying, yes, this is an emergency. You could think down the road of what this air quality guy's gonna do when he gets a $20,000, $20 million, however, equipment all over the place. But that's not gonna happen anytime soon if it ever happens. And the analysis, but right now what we see is a disaster. It's an emergency. When I saw my house burn down in 2014, that was my individual house, but the governor, we were declared a federal disaster with Weed, the city of Weed when the BOS fire happened. Well, we look at these individual houses and homes and wells and we think, oh, this is bad. But overall, this is no less than what the BOS fire did of 2014 and what the other fires did and may continue to do and probably will, God forbid, at Cockrell Lake. But let's have a voice, a vote for the people. That's who you represent. Thank you so much for representing us. And all these official people and all these people from all these government offices and all NOAA and all this, they're all, these academics who can speak perfectly. But as Chrissy last said, a lot of us don't have the technology. I emotionally can barely look at stuff online. And that's emotional, but technical, I'm getting a little bit better, but there's people who just don't have it or don't have the reception. So we need stuff in print, and with your voice, please, use your voice and your position in your seats right now to vote for the people, I as a person, and we the people of the Cockrell Lake community, who one day may be our own city, and vote for this, which is before you today. Thank you very much.
Battery 100%. Amber, it is your turn to speak. Hi there, my name is Amber Jameson and I live in Somes Bar along the Klamath River. Our family owns a rafting company that operates on the Klamath River. And I request that you do not declare a state of emergency for dam removal. I feel like emergencies are for unforeseen impacts to people, for the loss of life or property that was unforeseen. And, I feel like we've known that these impacts were coming for decades, at least a decade that we've been working on actually, passing and doing the dam removal. And I feel that, this would be kind of like crying wolf by asking for a state of emergency when nobody has their drinking waters impacted, nobody's swimming in, toxins. Like, all of this has been foreseen. So I ask that you do not pass this declaration. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Caller ending in 1662, it is your turn to speak.
Hi, my name is Scott Harding, resident of Siskiyou County. I've lived there for many years and recreate frequently on the Klamath River. Also work for an organization called American Whitewater, and we represent the broad interests of people across the country and here in Siskiyou County who also like to recreate and enjoy our whitewater rivers. We're really blessed with some fine ones here, the Klamath among them. And it has suffered from water quality problems for years and years with the toxic algae pollution coming out of the reservoirs caused by the dam dams up there, and it is having some water quality issues now as the reservoirs are being flushed, no doubt. As Matt St. John from the Water Board made really clear, the data that's been collected by the county, it represents a snapshot in time taken during the period during the peak turbidity, soon after the reservoirs began draining. If you look at the river right now, visually even, it's quite different than it was when those samples were taken. And you're going to find different water quality results because of that. Go back and do future testing. As Mr. St. John made clear too, the Water Board and Cal EPA have assessed the county's data and looked at the current conditions and have come to the conclusion that the water quality does not impact public health. So be it as it may, the river may be brown, there may be elevated levels of certain constituents in it. It is not harmful to public health. However, declaring a state of emergency based on that data is harmful to the county. As Amber just mentioned, we have a number of local businesses that run whitewater outfitting and fishing guiding trips on the Klamath, and declaring a state of emergency is saying to the world, don't come to Siskiyou County for the Klamath River. You'll see decrease in tourism, decrease in travel, fewer bookings in the motels, hotels, camping areas, and particularly for the companies that work on the river directly. So I don't think you're going to see any additional funding come from declaring a state of emergency. The state is unlikely to declare one in return. We've heard discussion about the different possibilities of funding streams here and there. I haven't heard anything that links up the declaration of a local state of emergency with assurance of additional funding. And I understand it's a way to register residents' opinion on dam removal. And in this county, many people do not support the dam removal, but causing additional economic harm by declaring a local state of emergency is really counter to the interests of the people of this county. And I hope that you will not do that. So please do not declare a state of emergency. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Caller ending in 0126, it is your turn to speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. It's not great internet where I live downriver. First of all, I wanted to thank you for having this meeting today.
Could you state your name, please?
I'm Regina Chigazola.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was about to do. I'm Regina Chigazola. I'm a downriver resident of Orleans, California, and former resident of Happy Camp, California. And I just wanted to ask you to not declare a state of emergency. I think it will really, so really sorry. I think it will really harm our downriver communities. And I think it'll also hurt future state of emergencies. As you know, we've had some really impactful and scary fires over the last few years. We've had toxic algae blooms almost every year. We've had fish kills. This is a county that has a lot of emergencies, and water quality at times has been a state of emergency, as has air quality, but that is not now. The river is getting cleaner. Downriver, you can see the color changing every day. I believe by the time it's time for recreation to be here, and it's time for us to get in the river, the water will be much cleaner. And by declaring a state of emergency, you're going to scare business away from the river. You're going to scare our rafting community, and you're going to hurt our economics. And I understand people around Copco Lake are upset, and I understand they're upset. Things look really different there, but dam removal is not creating an emergency. There's a lot of water quality impacts. I hope we can work on them together. I hope we can work on the water quality impacts in other places together. Downriver communities really care about the rivers. We're rooted here. We fish here. Fishing is shut down here. And the restoration of this river is going to allow people to start fishing again in the ocean and downriver. It's going to allow us to start rafting all year again, including in August, where we're usually shut down for toxic algae blooms. And the recovery doesn't happen overnight, but we need to be able to declare emergencies when we really need them. And that's when fires are burning our towns down, and when there are actual real emergencies that is impacting everyone in this county, and not just because some landowners are upset. I'm sorry that they are, but this is not an emergency, so please don't declare an emergency. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Next.
Caller ending in 7224, it is your turn to speak.
kind of good about local water.
Can you speak up a bit? We're having trouble hearing you.
I love you guys.
Okay. We'll go to in-house, Sarah Jackson. I have one more. This will be the last public comment for today, but go ahead. Not you. There's one more after you.
Hi, thank you. My husband and I also have a business.
Your name, please.
Oh, Sarah Jackson. Thank you. Montague. My husband and I also have a business on the Klamath River. And in the last 3 years, 3 or 4 years, the fishing on the Klamath River has been better than it has, his fishing guide has been better than it has in years. And this has affected our business, along with, we have many, many friends who are fishing guides. And this also, with the way the river is now, we will have zero income coming from this river for years to come. My husband is 70 years old. He's been fishing that river since he was 6. So when you take into account people that will be losing income, we will be losing income. And I beg you to declare a state of emergency. Thank you.
Thank you.
Charlene Walden.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Charlene Walden from Iron Gate. My husband and I are on the board of the Association for Iron Gate. I was hoping I wouldn't have to come up, but the fish kill thing just keeps coming up, and the blue-green algae being toxic. So back when they had the fish kill, 0203, 33,000 fish, I brought it up to Jim DePrey here in Siskiyou County to reopen the case, which he did. And so you have it on record somewhere in your archives. There was a chemical dump, meth lab, on one of the subsidiaries that killed those fish. They were blistered and bleeding when they hit the fish nets. That does not happen from blue-green algae or temperature. So that being said, they said it took 12 days to test the fish and the water, which is supposed to be done within 24 hours. So big mistake somewhere. And then the algae. So being a business owner in Klamath Falls, we fight the algae in swimming pools constantly. We kill the phosphates in the water, which is what the blue-green algae needs, phosphates and the nitrates in our water. Comes out of our groundwater naturally. Has always, always will. They say we're going to get rid of these blooms, but you're never going to get rid of them. They're always going to be up in the Klamath Basin. They're in cow ponds out in the fields. You get algae growing, you have nitrates and phosphates in the water. We test it at our shop all the time, and in turn help their swimming pools, which is not drinking water or the river, but I just wanted to bring it out because it kept irritating me. That the fish kill would get brought up and the blue-green algae being toxic, and there's never in the records I have ever researched in 20 years been a person that died or an animal that died from the blue-green algae. Now you can inhale it, yeah, you would have issues or different things, but they make pills out of it. And so there's, nutritional things. So I did like 500 opinion polls in Siskiyou County on the river, on the lake, here at Walmart. People used to take rakes, these women, and get the algae out of their way and make Kool-Aid out of Iron Gate water. My children and I did the CDC test there, where we swam during the high bloom. We're a windy day. They did our blood test, they did the swabs, and we all came out okay. So, thank you.
Thank you.
board, the declaration.
I'll bring it, I'm gonna close public comment. Miss Wendy, oh, I'm sorry, yes, go ahead, enter the emails.
Yeah, I wanted to mention we've received emails here, at the board did, as well as the clerk's office received emails in support, it looks like, of the resolution and the declaration from Jerry Bachkalupi, Pete Marino, and Dawn and Sheila Meamber, and an email from, who was this from? Scott Harding, in opposition to the declaration, and I do have copies here if the board wants to see them, as well as out here.
All right. So, this is a staff question. I'm going to come to the board next, but who was taking, we've heard a lot about the water quality of dams in. Who was taking or monitoring and doing sampling on the existing dams that were there with water quality?
So as part of the development of the definite plan and
I'm talking prior to the project itself.
I do not have an answer to that.
Okay. Because it sounds as though there's data out there, and I'm just curious as to who was monitoring that. Because I don't think, the only time the county did was when it was posted and we went up there. I remember Ms. Barber was here and we did the testing that the lady just described.
Can I just ask, you know, I vaguely, and I want to know one way or another, did we ever declare something regarding the bloom in Chicago?
We found no evidence, right?
Correct, yeah. I don't know all the details on that.
I mean, I just think that's good background information, because that keeps getting brought up.
YREKA Community Development Director. At the time, Terry Barber was the Director of Environmental Health. We did an extensive study of Iron Gate Lake and Blue Copco also for blue-green algae, which is not an algae. It's a cyanobacteria. And there are different types of cyanobacteria. There's one specific type of cyanobacteria, which I forget the name of right now, forgive me, that is toxic. The sampling that was conducted in Iron Gate and Copco did not have that specific type of cyanobacteria in it.
Do we do regular testing of it? Do we do regular testing of the water at all?
Currently, no. The State Water Board has a website where they do testing.
Okay.
But you can go there and see. And they're testing in Klamath Lake all the time. The last reports I received throughout the year have all been negative.
Okay, thank you. Anything further, Ms. Nielsen?
Yes, I did want to follow up. I just spoke with our project manager, Chelsea Murphy, and Pacific Corp, through their water quality permit, would have had certain requirements that may have included testing. We don't know what those parameters were, but we can look into those.
Thank you. Supervisor Howe, do you want to start?
Sure. Long day. I guess I have a question. I keep hearing that declaration is going to impose onerous things on the rafting business. And maybe the council, if I got her attention, we already have an advisory in place. What would a declaration do that's more onerous on the business than the current advisory, if anything?
Natalie Reed, County Council. I mean, emergency declarations are generally to seek assistance from the state, to if you need to have orders issued from the board to address the emergency. I don't usually think of them as being directed at businesses. Perhaps, Brian, have you seen emergency declarations that relate to businesses?
I guess what yeah, thank you. I guess what I'm looking for is there any mechanism that we would impose restrictions on business because of it?
The board does have certain emergency powers that emerge, but I haven't heard anything from the board indicating that they were going to issue any orders or curfews.
Wouldn't be my desire.
Brian Schneider for Emergency Services. Yes, correct on that. a state of emergency can be addressed and defined what the board wishes as a local state of emergency. If you want an area closed off, that would be done in the state of emergency. If you want an area, I mean, that's really what it is an emergency and set forth by the board or the writer.
But we're not looking at any area closures today or anything like that.
Negative, there's nothing written in.
Thank you. I want to address a comment I keep hearing too, and it's an assumption. I was taught a long time ago in natural resource science that when you assume something, it makes an ass out of you and me. Okay? And I think to say that there would and could not be an effect on a well adjacent to the river is quite an ignorant comment. It ignores the well-documented scientific geology of what's called the Klamath Knot and the rivers traversing through that and the complex geologies that water interfaces. I mean, we have everything from sand to heavy clays, and their chemical properties all interact with water differently and the contaminants within them. Some move quickly, some don't move at all. So just make a general assumption, I think, is quite an ignorant statement to make. And it gets at why I think we should be doing what we're doing. You know, thank God we don't have contamination, and thank God we're not drinking this water. Thank God we don't have to. And thank God it doesn't cross some of those tests. However, I want the attention put on this and the monitoring in place to make sure it doesn't cross that threshold. Because the last thing I want to do is be caught with my pants down and somebody, God forbid, get hurt or injured, because that is my primary purpose for being in this seat, is the protection of public health and welfare. And I think this is just, quite frankly, I don't get it. I don't get all the back and forth and everything else, truthfully, because it's just a practical step from my perspective in being proactive in monitoring this project and making it transparent. Don't you want to know? I mean, I do. You know, I don't understand why so many against it are so afraid of the truth. I don't know what else to say. I mean, I sat here for forever today and heard the same thing I heard last week. I haven't changed my mind.
Supervisor Chris?
Yes. Thank you for adding the air quality to it. It was an important part. The water quality testing is, as Supervisor Hop brought up, the groundwater testing is part of this proclamation. I think it's important to have those things included in on it and directly listed out to where they can show what our concerns are and set that marker. Along the lines of trust but verify. So we need to assure Supervisor Hop's hopefulness that nothing's been showing here, that we may have these tests put in place. So, like I said, I'm glad the water testing's been added to it, the air quality's been added to it, and the groundwater testing has been added to it. So, great job, guys.
Supervisor Valenzuela?
Sure. One of the things that I think that, for me, I've been involved with this along with Supervisor Cobb stuff from, I won't say the beginning, but when the process started, and I would remind the people out there that, and I certainly feel for where you're at and how it's impacting you. This board has fought this a whole way, and we've spent, as Supervisor Cobb stuff mentioned before, millions of dollars fighting this. Whatever happens today, the fact that I don't support an emergency declaration, I don't have the data to support it. And what I mean by that is that we've tested once. We need to continue, and we just put up the air monitors. And I think that there's what I've heard from people that would be on the pro side of it, you know, whether it's KRC, the things that they are doing, they're willing to do and step up. I've long said that one of the problems that we've had is lack of communication across multiple entities. This is a massive, complex issue regarding all kinds of entities. And Supervisor Howe, you have to realize that we, I'm just a non-educated telephone lineman. We talk about water, which goes across this whole county. That we're still trying to learn, and we learn all the time. Just when I hear something about a well that it isn't connected to the river because it flows the other way. So how does it, and I see a bill for the testing of a well. I don't see the data that says what it was. I don't see massive amounts of quote unquote data that says it's toxic, it's impacting the wells, things are happening. I mean, again, the initial impacts, I get that. I think they were intended. This was studied well. This didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened 10 years plus before I got started on this board. And so at this moment in time, it's not that I don't support you folks. I keep asking for questions. It was my idea to bring a project manager on. It was my idea to have air monitoring out here. It was my idea to have the special meetings here so we can spend all day getting more questions and having to get more answers that's going to be ongoing. Whatever happens, and I've said this, after everything's said and done, you're going to be there and we're going to still be here trying to figure this out.
Supervisor Ogren.
We're here to support you. We're here to protect you. One of the things about an emergency declaration is that it doesn't have to last forever. We're going to monitor this. We're going to review it every 60 days. Doesn't have to last forever. As things progress, we can stop it. So if at the end of the summer things are looking wonderful, we don't have to keep it going. So all this talk about short term, this is not necessarily a long-term item either. So that's one thing that we do have control over. We don't have a lot of control over a lot of things, but this is one thing we do have control over. So with this, it gives us power to give you more knowledge. It gives us more knowledge. It gives us a chance to have more information and more communication with the state and other agencies. It gives us a chance to get as much information out to you that we possibly can. And that's our goal.
So, I guess I'm going to ask, we're not asking for funding in this mechanism of proclamation. I think it's a request of assistance to do monitoring, period. And we're identifying why. I think this is a proactive move for those that think this is foolish. I would say it was foolish for everybody that it's indicated that they saw this coming and didn't prepare for what we're hearing today. That was foolish. I'll leave it at that. This proclamation is to get attention from the state of California and hopefully somewhere in the federal agencies that this should have been a no-brainer. This should have been done without anybody asking for it, just to provide assurance to the community that it was going to affect. Yes, long-term, this might be the best thing for salmon recovery that anybody's ever seen. But in the short term, those that are in charge should be looking and monitoring to protect the citizens that it affects directly. Because we did not ask for this. We are trying to live with it, and we're trying to live with it in a way that actually provides data to us that we don't have to wait until something tragic, more tragic happens, and then it's a little bit too late. So with that, I'll bring it back to the board for wherever the board would like to go.
Just one additional comment.
Sure, Supervisor Chris.
So you're going to hear these comments. How's the state going to view this? How are the feds going to view this? Are they going to, is this going to burn a bridge for the federal agency or a state agency? And I'll bring out in regards to this is I volunteer on the fire department and the ambulance crew. It doesn't matter who you respond to, you do your job.
That's right. That's right.
So if they're a little upset with us that we passed the declaration, get over it. Work with the people, deliver the best services you possibly can, and do those sorts of things. So that's the most emotional thing I'll say today. Usually I'm relatively calm.
I just want one follow-up comment. You know, this is getting scrutinized. I will tell you, I read enough articles, New York Times, LA Times. This is getting plenty of spotlight on this. And I have no doubt that the state is following this just by the response from whatever department, because they are following this. So I just question that, what this is going to buy us. Well, it's not going to buy us any more scrutiny. We got scrutiny.
I would just say that, yes, it's been in the dialogue with some state agencies, and as we've heard today from the KRC and upping their monitoring, I think those are all positive things moving in the right direction. But I think that it's taken this proclamation just to get that off the dime. I don't know how else to say that. So I think that there's hopefully benefit that we've raised the flag, that we need assistance on ongoing monitoring so that we can alleviate. If there's no problem, we welcome that. And I think that through Mr. Dean's department and what that working together with the KRRC, what that will provide, hopefully the sooner you know information about how that's going to transpire and bring it to a board meeting during public comment, the better. Because if we can alleviate the concerns that have been risen, then all is good, and I'll leave it at that. So I'm looking for action from the board. Yes.
So one more comment about the action. One thing we have happen often up here is targets get on our back. If you say something, you quote something, you do that, you have comments come onto your back. And I realize there's a colleague here that may have a target on his back. He did advocate for project manager, and I can tell you that in the community of Teal Lake, they have refuge issues as well as water issues over there. And that colleague called up the district manager in Teal Lake and said, tell me what you need. I'm talking to the governor's office. So he represents us. So we have votes, but take those targets off our back. We're trying to do the best we can.
Okay.
I'd like that recommended motion.
I have a motion to approve.
I'll second.
I have a second.
Can we include in that we're actually adopting the resolution? I don't believe the recommended motion says that.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
I guess I'll concur.
Alrighty, Supervisor Howell?
Aye.
Supervisor Valenzuela?
Unfortunately, no.
Supervisor Chris?
I'll be in line.
Supervisor Ogren?
Aye.
And Supervisor Coxon?
Aye.
Thank you, board.
Terrible race to do to hang out together, but it's there's a lot of that going on.
Skill I have, right? I went to state worker training and learned how to become a doctor.
I know, right?
Hey, I'm not against public lecture, so I'll reach out tonight and actually. There's that drop that's there. And I think I like it. That's the mobile community. So that's why I strike this.
Well, I don't know how that works, but there's some
Yeah, there's no guys. It's one of those things that's so
What do you got?
I'm gonna go get Mr. Harris that phone number.
Yes. No. He wants
Yes,
no,
he did.
They did start catching up in fish. Just not.
No.
Well, that was more dramatic than it seemed like it had to be.
It wasn't meant to be.
Well, yeah, about half of it. You don't want.
That's answering that question. Well, listen, when you change, what's going to happen is somebody's going to have to teach you. Come on, put it in try.
No, that's a.
Because they signed off on this process. So they're not going to admit to having an issue.
Otherwise the coughing just goes going. It's the irritation.
Good to see you. Good to see you guys.
Is Chelsea still here?
She is, she's in the hallway. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that figured for one. Somebody's like, I spent my work on Sacramento, which has shuts to dam, and still boat ramps get built instead of it. Now start talking about that
Yeah, they were actually. I don't think.
everything we possibly can to get you the information necessary for you to